Hello everybody. Today we're going to be learning about one-point perspective by drawing three boxes at different levels relative to the horizon line. And we're also going to set up a very basic interior scene and try out what it looks like to draw boxes within that specific space. These are the supplies you're going to need. You need a ruler, piece of printer paper, pencil, and eraser. To begin with, as we always do, let's please put your name on the top right-hand corner, as well as your period number. Before we begin this drawing, keep in mind there's two types of lines that you're going to want to work with. Firstly is the construction line. That's where you use very light pressure on your pencil, and you want to create lines that are easy to erase, easy to adjust. Second type of line is where we use hard lines. It's where you use your normal writing pressure to darken in things. We always start with construction lines. To start with, please place your ruler right over here across the middle of this paper. Make sure the ruler's edge is parallel to the long side of the paper. Find the ruler's edge at about the middle point and draw a light construction line going all the way across. I'll be pressing much harder, remember, so that the lines are visible in the camera. You want to get yours much lighter. Let's label this line. This is going to be called our horizon line. Okay, so you can use abbreviations for now, HL. Right in the middle of that horizon line, we're going to place a single dot. And that is going to be our vanishing point, VP. Let's take a moment to talk about what these things are and what they represent. Firstly, the horizon line. Let's define what that is. You can write the term right over here, fully, horizon line. If you ever have the chance to go to the beach and you look out into the distance at the ocean, you'll see that there is a line where the sky meets the sea. So the horizon line mimics that condition, right? It defines the outer limits of our physical vision. We can define the horizon line simply as the line where the sky meets the earth. And the sea surface being part of the earth. Now, the particular thing about the horizon line is it's not always in the middle of the paper. It can change position depending on where we are at eye level. And the horizon line is always at eye level. So that's how we can think about the horizon line. The vanishing point over here, let's take a moment to write that out. Vanishing point. This is the point where all of the orthogonal lines are going to meet up and converge. We'll talk about this term, orthogonal lines, in just a bit once we draw them. It's a little bit clearer once we have a visual reference. So it's where all the orthogonal lines converge. Converge is a fancier word for meet. It's where all those lines meet. On the bottom side over here, go ahead and write that term orthogonal lines. We'll be sure to define that in a moment. take a picture of these terms if you still need to catch up with them. I'm going to zoom the camera back out presently so that we can continue with the actual drawing part. So far we have the long horizon line, the central vanishing point. Now we're going to be able to draw some boxes, some simple box forms in 1-point perspective. The first box we're going to draw is going to be above the horizon line, somewhere around here. To start with, in 1-point perspective, you want to start with a rectangle shape, just a flat rectangle. So take your ruler and draw a rectangle where the bottom side and the top side are parallel to that horizon line. You can then cap off the left side and the right side. Making sure that those two lines are parallel to the short side of the paper. You might notice I overshot the lines just a bit. You can do that too, and just erase the corners later. So that is our front face of this first box. After that, we are going to extend that front face. We're going to extrude it out to make it look like there's a box form receding back in space, meaning receding meaning going farther back in space. Let's label these 4 corners A, B, C, and D so it's a little clearer and you can track what I'm talking about. After we establish this front face of this box, our job is to connect all the applicable corners to the vanishing point. But we're not going to need to connect all of them. Okay, so let's start with corner B at the top right. The best way to connect 2 points using your ruler is to first put your pencil lead onto the point. Get your ruler's edge right up against that pencil lead, and then swing it from that pivot point like a pendulum. Once the other point of the ruler, the other edge, other side of this edge of the ruler meets up with the vanishing point, then you can move the pencil and connect those 2 points very accurately. Now we just connected point B. Let's do the same for point C, as well as point D. This time I'm going to put my pencil lead on the vanishing point instead of corner D. Corner A, let's try connecting those. Okay, you put your pencil at the vanishing point, lay your ruler's edge up against it, and align your ruler's edge to point A. What do you notice about the line? It would actually go through this front face. Okay, now this isn't always a hard and fast rule. Sometimes we want to show edges that would otherwise be hidden, but if I were to strike this line, it would be a bit of a waste of my time at this point, because the front face of the box actually covers that edge. It's hidden behind it. Okay, so in this case, we only need corners B, C, and D. Along these orthogonal lines, any one of them, we're going to define now how deep this box goes. For now, if it were to literally all go back to the vanishing point, it means this is an infinitely long box. So right along this line, establish a single point right about there. Yours can go farther, it could be flatter, it's up to you. Now from this point, we're going to draw a vertical line going straight up and down, right up until this line. Put your pencil on that point. Lay your ruler's edge up against it. Make sure that your ruler's angle is straight up and down. And then you strike a line like this. These two lines should be going in the same direction. Very common mistake, everybody, is for people to strike a line at some random angle that is not parallel and it's not vertical to this line. Please don't do that. I'm going to put an X on there. That is a very common mistake. Very tempting to make. Do your best to avoid that. Once you've established this back edge, we have this bottom right corner over here, and we're going to draw a line horizontally, straight left and right, to finish off the box. Make sure your ruler's edge is going straight left and right. Again, very common mistake for people is to lay their ruler up at some random angle like this and draw a line like that. Okay? Please don't do that. Avoid that as best you can. This line should be going straight left and right, horizontal. Right? Horizontal meaning parallel to the horizon. Right? So it should be the same direction as this horizon line. Up till now, everything we've drawn should have been in light construction lines. What you can do with this box is darken in the outermost lines to make the overall form pop. So that's our first box in 1-point perspective, in this case above the horizon line. Draw an arrow right over here. This is an example of an orthogonal line. These are lines that all, if they were to go forever, they all converge or they all meet up at the vanishing point over here. Okay? In our vision, even if two lines are parallel to each other, if they're going farther away from us, it looks like they're getting closer and closer together, kind of like railroad tracks or when you look down a long road. Okay? This is the effect that we're recreating with these orthogonal lines. We understand that they're actually going in the same direction, but in our view, they look like they're getting closer together as they go farther. They get wider apart as they approach us. So we can define these orthogonal lines now that we have a fairly clear example drawn out. These are lines that define edges going farther away in space. In other words, fancier word for going farther away is they recede. Okay? So if there are edges that go farther away from us as the viewer, then they're going to be meeting up at the vanishing point. These edges, the front face edges between corners A, B, C, and D, none of these edges are getting farther away from us. They're flat to and parallel to our point of view. Okay? The next step to this is we are going to draw a box that's at the horizon line and a box that's beneath the horizon line, and we're going to see what the difference is in process. The starting point is always the same. You want the front face of the box to be defined first. I'm going to start with the top and bottom edges of this box. So that's the front face of my box. That's crossing the horizon line. Make sure the horizon line is going through the front face of the box. And we're also going to get a box that is below the horizon line. Your boxes can be a different size or a different proportion. You just want to make sure that you've got the correct positioning, either at, above, or below the horizon line to get some full practice here. So let's label these corners again: A, B, C, D. A, B, C, and D. We want to grab the closest corners to the vanishing point and connect them using orthogonal lines. Again, best practice, pencil down first, ruler's edge aligned, and then strike that line. Oops, didn't go far enough. Same thing with corner C over here. Now, when we try to connect corner A, you should notice that that orthogonal line is going to cross through the front face. So you know that's going to be hidden behind the box itself. Same thing with corner D. If you draw or try to draw an orthogonal line here, it's going to cross through the front face of the box. So we know we don't actually need it. After we define all the orthogonal lines we need, we define the depth of the box, how far back in space it goes. Let's make this one go a little farther. Going to draw a line there. This vertical edge is going to get duplicated there. Okay, make sure your ruler is going straight up and down, not at some funny angle. And then once you define the depth, you can then go ahead and darken in the outermost lines of the box to make the overall form pop. The steps for creating this box and making it look like it's receding back into space, it's very much similar to what we did up top over here. We're just grabbing different corners. You want to get the corners closest, and by this point, hopefully you can get a sense of which corners would actually connect to the vanishing point. It would be A, B, and C. Not necessarily D, because that, if we connect that to the vanishing point, it would cross through the front face and it would be a hidden edge. The reason why I wanted to have you label all these corners is to make sure you understand that it's not always the same corners that connect, and it's not always the same corners that we exclude. Over here, we didn't connect corner A, but over here, we are going to. Over here, we connected corner D, but over here, it's not going to be connected. It's very situational, and what determines whether they connect or not is the box's positioning relative to the horizon line. So let's go ahead and draw our construction line, orthogonal lines to connect these three corners, A, B, and C. Oops, ruler slipped. It's always that three-step process. Just establish the front face, connect the orthogonal lines, and then now we're going to define how deep that box goes by drawing a little dot. Here there's going to be a horizontal line. Here there's going to be vertical. Again, very common mistake is for people to draw some kind of random angle like this. That's not a horizontal line. It's got to go straight left and right. So please avoid that very common mistake. Lay your ruler's edge up against your pencil and make sure that it's parallel to the horizon line. And over here, you want to make sure that it's going straight up and down, parallel to the short edges of the paper. You can darken in now the outermost edges of the box. And those are our three initial boxes, right? To get a starting, this is just our starting point for understanding how 1-point perspective works. Now that we're done with this, let's get a little more practice. These are just boxes floating in space, receding back to the vanishing point. Let's establish a very simple interior scene. The starting point for a linear perspective drawing is always going to be the same. We want to establish a horizon line first. In this case, let's go ahead and see what it's like to draw a horizon line a little bit higher up. Horizon line, remember, is going to define where our eye level is. If our horizon line is over here, higher up, that means we are up higher in the scene. Either standing up or standing up on a ladder, or maybe floating in the air on a helicopter, depends on what the scene is. But establish your vanishing point at the center of the horizon line. Just for practice, let's label these again. HL for horizon line, VP for vanishing point. Now, we are going to draw the back face, the back wall of a room that we're going to pretend that we're standing in right now. Okay. So this is going to be a big rectangle that crosses the horizon line, and it's more or less centered in the page. So I'm going to start with these two vertical lines. And then we can cap them off on the top and on the bottom. Now this is the back wall of this room we're about to draw. From the four corners of that back wall, we're going to connect it back to that vanishing point. The thing is, though, we're kind of inverting the relationship a bit. Skip this portion of the line. You're actually going to only draw from this one corner out to the edge of the paper. You're going to repeat that same process for the rest of the three corners. Align your ruler's edge to the vanishing point and the corner, and just draw outwards, okay, to the edge of the paper. So already you should be able to start to visualize the interior, that we're inside of an interior of a room, where this is the back wall, here's the ground, ceiling, left side wall, right side wall. What we're going to do now is practice drawing in some basic box shapes again to map out some and visualize some basic furniture. Along this line over here, determine how wide you think a bed should be, right? So grab yourself a point right about there. If you want your bed to be wider, it'll be farther out. If you want it to be more of like a twin bed, it'll be closer in. Starting with this corner over here, we're going to draw the front face of that bed. So I'm going to start with a horizontal line. Another horizontal line parallel to that. And I'm going to cap it off on the left and right side with some vertical lines. So that is the front face of my bed. And then now we have a situation where it should be a little more familiar. Once we have the front face, we determine which corners connect back to the vanishing points. This corner and that corner, they're definitely going to connect back. So lightly draw some construction lines connecting those two corners. These two corners, no need. The front face of the box actually covers them up. Now, to determine how far the bed goes, right over here at this intersection, where this orthogonal line meets this corner of the room, that is the maximum distance that that bed could go. So from there at that intersection, you can draw a horizontal line. And at this point, you can darken that in with a hard line because we actually have the outermost lines of the bed that we can darken in and make it pop. For now, everyone, we're just sticking with basic box shapes, just to get you familiar with constructing some skeletons. The ability to draw a box is fundamental, but it's not the end game here. Normally, this is just the kind of starting point to draw in some pillows, for instance, or sketch those in the correct positioning, like the sheets and things like that, right? All of those would go in after setting up a perspectival skeleton like this. So we have a bed. Let's practice that skill just like 2 more times over here. Right around here, let's see if we can add in a table. Same sort of steps. Let's establish at what point we would see the front face of the table. How close is it to us? I'm going to get a point fairly close to the bottom edge of the paper. And I'm going to use that to draw the beginnings of that front face of the table. Horizontal line down here. I'm going to use the back edge of my ruler to make sure it's parallel with the edge of the paper. This is going to go higher than the bed. And then we'll cap it off like so. Now that we have the front face, you can now determine which corners connect to the vanishing point. Corners A, B would connect. C, not necessarily, because that would cross the front face. D over here would connect. Lightly draw some construction lines back to the vanishing point from each of the 3 corners. The table can go a maximum distance to over here, where this orthogonal line crosses with the back corner of the room. but that's a long table. I'm going to define the width of the width of this table right about there. Leave some room for some shelving or something like that. At that corner I just defined, I'm going to draw a horizontal line straight left and right, a vertical line straight up and down, and then I can darken in the outermost lines of this box right over here. So far we've been focusing on objects and mapping them out for things that would sit on the floor. It's also important to get familiar with what it's like to map some things out that are hung up on the wall, right? These are surfaces too. If this is a work table where you get your studying done, let's put a little bulletin board up here that's the same width as this table. What you can do is from this back corner over here and that corner over there, you can lightly draw some construction lines going straight upwards, lightly. Now, you want to determine how much space there is between the top of the table and the bottom of this bulletin board. You can define a point right there. And then let's determine how high up that bulletin board goes. I'm going to say right over here. We have one side defined. We're going to make a very skinny rectangle, okay? Because something that's hung up on the wall, be it a canvas or a bulletin board, it's going to have a little bit of thickness at least. So small horizontal line there, small horizontal line here. And let's give it a small amount of thickness. So this is still the front face of this box form right over here. We're just using a very different proportion. Long and skinny. We have 1, 2, 3 corners that are going to connect to the vanishing point. It's the same thinking that you need to use to determine which corners actually go. If it crosses that front face, you know you don't need it. So draw some light lines between all 3 of these corners that recede back into space. And then here, it's a little bit tricky. I'm going to zoom it in a bit. Right at this intersection between that initial construction line we drew and the far side orthogonal line, we need to draw a little tiny horizontal line. Because where that horizontal line meets with that little sliver, right? You see the difference between the 2 orthogonal lines, right where they meet, that's where we're going to have the far edge of our bulletin board. I overshot that a bit over here. So it's going to end right there. And we can darken in this orthogonal line. And then this top side orthogonal line. So there we have it. 3 objects, in this case, positioned relative to an interior scene. three box forms that are just kind of floating in space, above, at, and below the horizon line. Thank you so much for working with me, everybody. I'll see you in class.